If someone had told me that helping my best friend's son would eventually destroy years of trust and leave several people questioning everything they believed about loyalty, I would have called them crazy. At the time, it felt like I was simply doing what any decent person would do. I've known Mark for more than 20 years. We met when we were both young, struggling to build our careers and support our families. Through marriages, job changes, financial problems, and every major milestone life threw at us, we stayed close. We weren't just friends. We were like brothers. Because of that friendship, I watched his son, Ethan, grow up. I remembered him as the energetic kid who followed his father everywhere. Over the years, he became a responsible young man. He was polite, hardworking, and respectful. I never had children of my own, so in many ways, I cared about him as if he were family. One evening, I received an unexpected call from him. His voice sounded different. Normally confident and upbeat, he seemed exhausted. "Can we talk?" he asked. I immediately knew something was wrong. We met the following day at a quiet coffee shop. The moment I saw him, I could tell he hadn't been sleeping well. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes, and his usual smile was nowhere to be found. For several minutes, he struggled to explain what was bothering him. Then everything started pouring out. He told me he was having serious problems in his relationship. The woman he loved seemed distant. Their conversations often turned into arguments. He felt confused, frustrated, and completely lost. What surprised me most was that he wasn't asking for money or favors. He simply wanted someone to listen. For nearly 2 hours, I sat there while he talked. I offered the best advice I could. I told him that every relationship faces challenges. Communication, honesty, and patience were important. Nothing I said was extraordinary, but he seemed relieved just to have someone hear him out. Before we left, he thanked me. "You have no idea how much I needed this," he said. I didn't think much of it afterward. But a few days later, he called again. Then again the following week. Soon, our conversations became regular. Sometimes he needed advice. Sometimes he only wanted to vent. Other times, he simply wanted reassurance that he wasn't making mistakes. Because of my friendship with his father, I felt responsible for helping him. If Mark's son was struggling, I wanted to be there for him. Weeks passed, and our discussions grew longer. The more he shared, the more complicated his situation appeared. There seemed to be details he wasn't fully explaining. Then one night, during a conversation that lasted well past midnight, he revealed something he had been hiding from everyone. The moment he told me, I realized this wasn't just a troubled relationship anymore. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The secret Ethan revealed that night wasn't what I expected. He admitted that he no longer trusted his girlfriend, Claire. According to him, something had changed months earlier. She wasn't openly hostile or cruel. In fact, she still acted normal most of the time. But her behavior had become inconsistent. Some days she was affectionate and engaged. Other days she seemed emotionally absent, as if her mind was somewhere else entirely. At first, he blamed stress. They both worked demanding jobs, and life could easily pull people in different directions. But the distance continued growing. He told me their arguments had become repetitive. Every disagreement circled back to the same issue: communication. Whenever he asked what was wrong, she insisted everything was fine. Whenever he tried discussing their future, she changed the subject. The uncertainty was eating him alive. Over the next several weeks, our conversations became more frequent than ever. Sometimes he called during lunch breaks. Sometimes late at night. Occasionally he would send messages asking if we could talk because he needed advice. I kept reminding him not to jump to conclusions. Trust needs evidence before suspicion takes over, I told him. He agreed, but I could hear frustration in his voice. The more details he shared, the more I understood why he felt trapped. Claire wasn't giving him clear answers, but she also wasn't doing anything obvious enough to justify ending the relationship. He felt stuck between doubt and loyalty. Eventually, I suggested something simple. Instead of accusing her of anything, he should focus on rebuilding communication. Ask questions. Listen carefully. Be patient. To my surprise, he actually followed the advice. For a short period, things seemed to improve. Their arguments became less frequent. They spent more time together. Ethan sounded hopeful again. I genuinely believed they were moving in the right direction. Then another problem emerged. Claire suddenly became interested in keeping parts of her life private. By itself, that wasn't unusual. Everyone deserves personal space. But according to Ethan, the change was dramatic. She became protective of her phone. She started leaving rooms to answer certain calls. Plans changed without explanation. When he asked innocent questions, she responded defensively. Again, I encouraged caution. People often make mistakes when they let fear control their decisions. Still, I couldn't ignore how uneasy he sounded. One evening, he called me after a particularly bad argument. For the first time, I heard anger replacing confusion. I feel like I'm fighting for a relationship by myself, he said. I didn't have an easy answer. The truth was that I was beginning to wonder if something deeper was happening. Not because I had evidence, because patterns were starting to emerge. Every story Ethan shared pointed toward the same conclusion. Someone was withholding the truth. The hardest part was watching how much the uncertainty affected him. His confidence faded. His sleep suffered. Even his work performance started declining. He wasn't just worried about losing a relationship anymore. He was worried about discovering that the person he trusted most wasn't who he thought she was. A few days later, Ethan asked if I would meet him in person. The moment I arrived, I could tell something had happened. He looked pale. His hands were shaking. Without saying a word, he pulled out his phone and showed me a message he had accidentally seen. I read it once. Then I read it again. My stomach dropped. The message didn't prove everything, but it proved enough. For the first time, I realized Ethan's fears might not be fears at all. They might be the beginning of a betrayal neither of us was prepared to face. The message was short, but it changed everything. It wasn't the kind of text two casual friends would exchange. The language was personal, intimate. More importantly, it referenced recent meetings that Claire had never mentioned to Ethan. He stared at me, waiting for me to tell him there was another explanation. I couldn't. What I saw raised serious questions, and pretending otherwise would have been dishonest. Even then, I urged caution. One message wasn't enough to fully understand the situation. People make assumptions when emotions take control, and assumptions can destroy relationships just as easily as betrayal can. But Ethan had already reached a breaking point. Over the following days, he started paying closer attention to the inconsistencies he had ignored for months. The more he looked, the more troubling details he found. Schedules didn't match. Stories changed. Excuses became harder to believe. Every new discovery added another crack to the trust he had been trying so desperately to preserve. What hurt him most wasn't the possibility of losing Claire. It was realizing that he had spent months doubting himself while defending someone who might not have been honest with him. I watched him go through every stage of disbelief. First came denial. He kept searching for innocent explanations. Then came frustration. He wanted answers but couldn't get them. After that came anger. Not explosive anger. The quiet kind. The kind that grows when someone feels foolish for trusting too much. Finally, he made a decision. He was going to confront her directly. No accusations. No shouting. Just a simple conversation with one goal: the truth. When that conversation finally happened, it lasted several hours. I wasn't there, but afterward Ethan called me. His voice told me everything before he spoke a single word. The truth had come out. Claire admitted that she had developed a relationship with someone else while still being committed to Ethan. She tried to describe it as emotional rather than physical. She insisted it had started innocently. She claimed she never intended for things to go so far. But by that point, the details hardly mattered. For Ethan, the betrayal wasn't measured by specific actions. It was measured by secrecy. She had shared parts of herself with someone else while convincing him that everything was normal. Months of confusion suddenly made sense. Every unanswered question, every defensive reaction, every unexplained absence. The puzzle pieces finally fit together. What shocked me wasn't that an affair had happened. Unfortunately, those things happen more often than people realize. What shocked me was the identity of the other person. When Ethan revealed who it was, I felt my stomach tighten. Neither of us had expected it. The individual wasn't a stranger. It wasn't someone from another city. It wasn't some random coworker. It was someone connected to their lives closely enough that the betrayal immediately became larger than just a failing relationship. Suddenly families, friendships, and reputations were involved. The fallout began almost immediately. People started choosing sides before they even knew the full story. Rumors spread. Half-truths circulated. Everyone seemed eager to give opinions while very few understood what had actually happened. Meanwhile, Ethan struggled to process reality. One day he talked about ending everything and walking away forever. The next day, he questioned whether forgiveness was possible. He wasn't thinking clearly, because heartbreak rarely allows clear thinking. I tried helping him focus on facts instead of emotions. But emotions were everywhere. The situation had grown beyond a private relationship issue. It had become a crisis affecting multiple people. Then came the moment I had been dreading since the first suspicious message. Mark found out. Not fragments of the story. Not rumors. The entire truth. And when my best friend learned exactly what had happened, I knew the consequences were only beginning. When Mark learned the truth, his reaction wasn't what most people would expect. He didn't start yelling. He didn't make threats. He simply sat in silence. After more than 20 years of friendship, I had seen him face financial disasters, family emergencies, and personal losses. Through all of it, he had remained calm. But this was different. The disappointment on his face was harder to witness than anger ever could have been. As a father, he was devastated for Ethan. As a man, he struggled to understand how trust could disappear so completely between people who once claimed to love each other. For several days, he barely spoke about it. Then reality settled in. The relationship between Ethan and Claire was effectively over. There was simply too much damage. The betrayal itself was painful enough, but the secrecy behind it had destroyed any foundation they might have rebuilt upon. Ethan eventually met with Claire one final time. Not to argue. Not to seek revenge. Not even to demand explanations. By then, he already knew the answers wouldn't change anything. He only wanted closure. According to him, the conversation was surprisingly calm. Claire admitted she had made mistakes. She expressed regret and apologized repeatedly. She said she never intended to hurt him. I believe she meant those words. The problem was that regret arrives after the damage is done. No apology can erase months of dishonesty. No explanation can restore trust overnight. Some actions create consequences that continue long after the moment itself has passed. After their final conversation, they went their separate ways. What followed was the difficult process of rebuilding life. For Ethan, that meant accepting painful truths. He had spent months trying to save a relationship that the other person had already emotionally stepped away from. That realization hurt more than the breakup itself. Yet slowly, he began recovering. He focused on work. He reconnected with friends. He stopped searching for answers that no longer mattered. Most importantly, he stopped blaming himself for someone else's choices. That shift changed everything. For the first time in months, he seemed lighter. Not happy. Not completely healed. But moving forward. Mark noticed it too. One evening, he told me something I never forgot. You can survive heartbreak, he said. What destroys people is refusing to accept reality. He was right. The moment Ethan accepted the truth, his healing finally began. As for Claire, I heard very little afterward. Life moved on. People took different paths. The constant drama eventually faded into memory. But the lessons remained. Looking back, I often think about the night Ethan first called me asking for help. At the time, neither of us knew where that conversation would lead. He thought he was seeking advice about relationship problems. In reality, he was standing at the beginning of a journey that would force him to confront betrayal, disappointment, and difficult truths about the people closest to him. I learned something as well. Sometimes helping someone doesn't mean fixing their problems. Sometimes it means sitting beside them while they discover the truth for themselves. I couldn't save Ethan's relationship. I couldn't prevent the betrayal. I couldn't undo the choices other people made. What I could do was listen when he felt alone. And in the end, That was what mattered most. Today, my friendship with Mark remains strong. Ethan has moved forward with his life and become a wiser, more confident person. The pain eventually faded, but the lesson never did. Trust is one of the most valuable things we can give another person. It takes years to build, moments to break, and sometimes a lifetime to fully restore. And once secrets become more important than honesty, the ending is usually already written.